So I just wanted to kind of show some of the trouble I'm having with my mill now that I've completely converted it to the version 2 electronics. Some of these problems may be unique to my situation, given that it's kind of a hybrid between the newer model and the older model. But basically the main problem I'm having, the reason I probably won't run the mill right now until I figure it out, is if I set the RPM to a certain RPM, so here we have set RPM 500, and then I start the spindle, you'll see that it'll show the real RPM down here and our spindle load that we're currently experiencing down there. So you can see it says 500 on the real RPM, and spindle load is sitting at around 5%. So if I take a photo tachometer, which I have here, and I've got a photo reflective tape on the end of a tool there, if I measure it with the photo tach, you can see it's actually measuring 750 RPM. So whatever I set in manual mode or CNC mode, doesn't matter, the actual real RPM's higher. So if I take and set the RPM higher here, so if I set it to 750, you'll see it goes up to, like, I think 1,000. And again, the real RPM will always say that it's accurate. The real RPM will say, within a few RPMs or so, it'll say that, it's at 746, 751. But then if you measure it here, you'll see it go up to 1,000. So there it is, 1,125. So clearly that's not right. Now, this machine right here is a variable speed milling machine with a variable frequency drive and a 3 horsepower spindle. And I tested this methodology on this mill to make sure my methodology was good. And if I set that mill to 500, the photo tach shows 500 off the tool. So the methodology is sound. That machine right there, I run them off the same 220 volt circuit. So I basically unplug one and plug the other one in because I only have a single 220 volt circuit, and that machine's never given me a day's trouble. It works perfectly. It's a manual milling machine with a DRO and a variable speed spindle, 3 horsepower spindle, 220 volt single phase. The electronics on that are just as complicated as this brushless linear DC drive that's on this Mikini. This one's worked perfectly from day one, never hiccuped once, never complained. Same thing with the lathe. It's not a variable speed in terms of infinitely variable, it's belt drive, but it's never given me a single day's trouble. I've also used plasma cutter and a welder on that same 220 volt circuit. None of those tools have ever given me a single day's trouble. Never had to reset one in the middle of using it. Nothing like that. So if there's something wrong with the power, it's unique to this machine. I mean, I guess it's a possibility, but it seems unlikely to me. It seems really unlikely to me. But I mean, I also have a laser cutter engraver over here, and computers, and all kinds of sensitive electronics that are running on servos and things like that. All of them work fine. This is the only tool that I have that's consistently been problem from day one. Just to clarify. So the higher you go, the more off it is, which is probably the reason why I won't run the spindle for right now, because you could actually overrun it in that condition, I would think. So if I bump up the speed here to 1,000, or no, I'll go to 2,000. If I go to 2,000, you'll see it's actually going to run at 3,000 RPM. So it's just not accurate at all. I don't know where it's being indexed, but wherever it's being indexed, it's not accurate. You can hear the spindle too. It's like, it's probably not good to overrun it. So that's supposed to be 2080. We're getting 3,000 on the tachometer. So it's just not right. And it's the same thing if I stop the spindle and put it in CNC mode, and I can do the same test in Mach 3. I can go to MDI, do some input here, do a speed request of S1000, hit enter, hit M3, start the spindle in clockwise direction, and it'll spin up. There's a little delay in Mach 3 from the dwell settings, but you'll see that so 1000 RPM from request from Mach gets you 1500 RPM in reality, and so it's really consistent. It doesn't appear to be a signaling issue from the control panel or from the smooth stepper or something like that. It seems to be an issue really with the spindle. So basically that's one issue. The other issue that I'm having, not really an issue, more of an observation. It's sort of odd. And again, I think this could have something to do with the machine being different from probably every other machine, in the sense that it's a combination of V1 and V2. The other thing that I've noticed is the steps per unit in Mach. The default is like 20,000 steps per unit, and in order to get mine to be accurate, I'm talking about the motor tuning right here. In order for mine to be accurate, I had to set mine to 25,394 steps per unit, which doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand why it would be different unless I had a different ball screw or different stepper motors from the newer machines. Then that might make some sense. But even if that were the case, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, because that's a really high number for I measured the ball screw, and it looked like about 5 or 6 TPI to me, with single start. And if you do 2,000 steps per revolution microstepping with 5 TPI ball screw, that should be like 10,000 steps per unit, not even the 20,000 steps per unit that's normal for you know, like a 20 TPI ball screw or something like that. So I'm not sure where the 20,360 comes from, unless they're doing higher microstepping. You know, if their microstepping is higher than normal, that might explain it. But for 5 TPI ball screw with 2,000 steps per rev, should be somewhere in the neighborhood of 10,000 steps per unit. So I don't understand this. It doesn't. Mine's not the default. Mine's really high, I think, at 25,394 for a 5 TPI ball screw. I don't get it. It works fine. I mean, it's accurate. Like I said, I tested the accuracy of the X and Y and the repeatability, and it's very good. Actually, it's surprisingly good. But it's still a little worrisome. It's like, what's going on here? Phil thinks that I have issues with like my ground, high impedance ground, or voltage is off or something like that. I would show you, but I may make another video. This video is getting too long. But I tested the voltage, and the voltage is good. It's not high, it's not low, it's consistent, it's not changing. Ground appears to be good. I can't check for high impedance ground because you need like a mega or something like that to test for high impedance ground. I've got an electrician, my electrician, coming over, and he's going to test for high impedance ground, and he's going to you know, just verify everything and make sure everything's right. Like I said, I'm really skeptical of that explanation, simply because all these other really complex machine tools in my arsenal with, you know, variable frequency drives and things like that work fine. So that seems like seems pretty bogus to me. But if in case he's right, we're going to find out. We'll have an electrician come over and measure everything and verify it. One of the things I'm curious is if anybody's ever measured their RPMs with a photo tack off of their Mikini to see if it's accurate. Is my machine the only machine that the Spindle RPM detection is not accurate? Is it something with my machine, or is it something with is it something common to all the Mikinis? And then the other thing I'm curious about is if anybody has any explanation for that steps per unit in steps per inch in Mach, because I don't get it. So that's it for now.